In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at the severe cold, which is expected now to continue at least past the midway point of the month of January. We're going to be diving into that. We also have numerous major snowfall threats, one of which is ongoing as we speak, another one coming up next weekend, and now models starting to pick up on another threat. It's pretty far out, so take it with a grain of salt, but the weekend after, we see the cold continue and they're starting to trend at something trying to move up the coast, and we're going to be watching it closely. So let's dive into things. First off, taking a look at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook here from the Climate Prediction Center, and as you can see, this is for the 11th through the 15th, and they do still anticipate cold air to continue, especially in this southeastern, south central corridor. Some warmer temperatures along the west coast, also some along the north central states, but for the most part, cold in the east is going to prevail during this time frame. The other interesting factor here is the precipitation. When we look at this, drier along the west, much wetter across a lot of the Rockies and plains, a little bit drier here throughout some of the Midwest and Ohio Valley. We also see along the East Coast, this is the big one here, while we have very cold temperatures in this area, above average precipitation indicating something potentially moving up the coast. What I think this is the National Weather Service acknowledging that we do see a pretty significant threat for a snowstorm along the East Coast, again, mostly during that 10th through 11th time frame, which is the very beginning of this. So I think that's what we're seeing here. Also, as we move a little bit past the 15th, let's take a look at the 8 to 14 day outlook. This is the 13th through the 19th, and as you can see, cold to continue here along the southeastern corridor. Again, 13th through 19th as we reach past the midway point of the month. Above average temperatures here across a lot of the north central states. Very interesting. And some cooler temperatures out west. Very weird. I think they're kind of torn. We see some negative PNA signs here. It stands for Pacific North American Oscillation. Typically, when we see this in its negative phase, that would mean warm in the east, but it seems like they're more confident in the cold in the east than they are in the west. So maybe a little bit of a fork in the road situation, but it seems like they're, again, leaning towards cold in the east for the most part. Precipitation, not quite as wet along the East Coast during this time frame, a little drier, but still the plains and Rockies kind of flourishing with some above average precipitation here. As we take a look at their 3 to 4 week outlook, which will cover basically the rest of the forecast period, the 18th through the 31st here, we see cold throughout the north central and into the eastern states, also above average throughout the southwest and the northeast there. So very, very cold compared to normal, expected to continue through the end of the month, according to the Climate Prediction Center. Precipitation also looking quite bullish along the East Coast. Very wet here. Could spell more coastal storms on the way as we approach that ending point of the month. Also, the Northwest getting some activity going once again. So, pretty interesting look, to say the least. Here is their official January outlook. We've showed this a couple of times, and there will no longer be any updates for this. This is basically it, but we see it looks a lot like that 3 to 4 week outlook, where we see cold moving from the north central into the southeast in particular, warmer out west for the most part, and when we look at the precipitation, a little less down here than what we saw in the 3 to 4 week outlook. I think it's worth noting that the 3 to 4 week outlook is actually newer than this, more updated. So perhaps they're expecting it to be a little wetter than they originally anticipated. But we do see above average in the Northwest, much like that 3 to 4 week outlook, and for the New England area in particular. Let's move into the model guidance. Again, multiple threats of snowfall. One is ongoing, so let's take a look at later on this evening, and what we see is some snowfall, some ice, some freezing rain, some sleet. So this is going to be a messy, kind of mixed bag event of precipitation. We see all different sorts of precipitation happening here. Definitely all worth noting, in my opinion. Mostly freezing rain, obviously, to the south, going to be very impactful for the Smoky Mountains, some areas further north in the Appalachian Mountain Range, like Virginia and West Virginia, areas of Indiana, Kentucky, and southern Ohio in here, and then pretty monstrous snowfall amounts throughout a lot of these areas, upwards of 10 to 15 inches for some folks. As we just keep on going towards that next kind of afternoon here, Monday on January 6th, we see some snowfall left over as this low is moving offshore. It's really, really interesting. We're seeing a jet stream that moves directly offshore. If we, in the, a different parallel event, saw the jet stream a little bit more amped up the coast, what we would see is likely a much more major snowfall event, especially on the second half of it, where these areas would likely cash in on a lot of snowfall. But of course, we know it's really going down, and it is not going to happen this time. But it's worth noting that that is what would happen if we had just a slightly different jet stream. Tuesday, a lot quieter, but much colder. We could see that there is a ridge over the west and really a trough that's stretching across most of the United States, and again, a lot flatter off the east coast. So very cold throughout these areas for the day on Tuesday the 7th. Wednesday the 8th looks very, very similar. Let's move this towards Thursday on the 9th, and this is when we'll call it snowstorm number 2 gets started. We see it picking up some steam down here from the Gulf. We can tell there's a huge flow of moisture even moving over Mexico into this. We see a lot of moisture coming up straight from the Gulf of Mexico, and it is already bringing snowfall perhaps to Texas and Oklahoma by Thursday, just a few days from now. As we keep going towards Friday, we see this low somewhere nearby the coast of Louisiana, coast of Mississippi, somewhere in there with some snowfall for portions of the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and even deep south here like northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, and also northern Georgia. As we keep going, just a couple of hours there on that Friday, the 10th into the 11th time frame, we see this storm is a lot closer to the North Carolina coast. We see snowfall over the Smoky Mountains, Appalachian Mountains, and everywhere eastward for areas of kind of the central North Carolina region into Virginia. That goes for central Virginia, even southeastern Virginia. This model shows some freezing rain or sleet in there. Obviously, we've seen giant fluctuations, but I think the one thing that stays true today on both models is that there is a storm and there is snowfall. That's what we can be confident in for now. Location and amounts are still going to be a question mark. It's amazing to me that the models were able to pick up the fact that we would see a coastal storm days ago. I'm talking December like 29th or 28th is when we first started talking about it. And I mentioned to you guys, it could go away, it could come back. Throughout those videos, we talked about it was showing a blizzard then, a very major blizzard. Obviously, we talked about the fact that it would very, very possibly be a lot less than that, and I think that's what we're seeing here. Just a very standard but major snowstorm for these mid-Atlantic areas, potentially the Northeast. It's another situation where is the jet stream going to be more pointed along the coast, or is it going to be more flatlined off the coast? Because as time goes on, you can see that separates more and more just based on the tilt, and that's going to make a huge difference, especially in these areas here. I would say there's more confidence in snowfall for the mid-Atlantic pocket than even the Northeast pocket with this system, because in either case, we like to see the low kind of move off this Carolina coast, and these areas cash in, even if it's flat from that point, even if it's up the coast. It really doesn't make a massive difference for these areas here, so that's where our highest confidence is at this point. Now, as we keep going, we see that this does, like I said, move straight off the coast at this point. Yesterday's model runs had it going up the coast. I would say there's still plenty of time for some changes. We could see this one come up the coast still. But if they start to settle in on this solution of moving more horizontally straight off the coast, then again, watch out mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast would be lowering in their snowfall chances if we saw that trend continue. As we move towards Sunday afternoon, still rather cold. I would say the trough is actually centered over the central states here, as we have a little bit of a warm push over the southeast. Nothing major. Very typical after storms move through. That's kind of just the look for Sunday. Monday, it's already moving back in. Some snow showers for the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Appalachian Mountain Range. And then we get much colder for Tuesday the 14th here. Wednesday the 15th, very cold over the East Coast and very warm out west. Here's Friday the 17th, where we start to see our next potential coastal low forming. Both models have this storm in some shape or form. So again, when these models agree, it means a whole lot more than when we just see a single one of them showing something. So same thing applies here. I know there's going to be so many people in the comments, so many people on social media, so many people everywhere that don't watch the video and they just look at the thumbnail and they don't hear this part. And I wish that there was a way to portray all of this information in a quick glance, because so many people aren't going to watch it. But this, and even the one before it, are snowfall chances, and the location and amounts are very, very susceptible to big changes. So we are going to see some huge fluctuations with both of them likely over the coming days, and for this one that we're looking at now for weeks. But what stands true is we see model agreement on 2 storm threats. We have plenty of cold, and that's going to bring some pretty high probabilities that somebody sees snow from these, and that's the biggest picture in the long range. That's why I love doing forecasting the way that I do. I can tell you guys that straight up. Everybody hears me that watches the video, right? That's the important part. You have to watch the video. You can't judge a book by its cover. That's literally what a lot of people tend to do, but that's just what it is. And we are able to pinpoint potential timeframes of snowfall threats long out for those of you that are curious, and for those of you that need to know if there's a chance of snowfall events. I think it's a beautiful way of portraying that information. If you were to just wait for your local Mets to talk about it, you wouldn't know for probably a whole week or more that there's a potential threat, even though it's been popping up all of that time, because they're waiting until they're confident in the amounts and the location and everything. That's not how we do it here. I'm just trying to pinpoint to you guys timeframes to watch for potential activity, and then we start to narrow down the location and amounts as we get closer. So I kind of let you guys walk through the information with me as I'm getting it. It's a very transparent approach, and I think that that's kind of what people need a lot more of. There's plenty of people doing the traditional forecasting, but this is what I think it's been missing. It's not really been a thing for a long time. Let's keep going. I went on a tangent there. Saturday, we see that this storm on this model run is a little south, right? So we see some snowfall here, but it's very far south. It's a little suppressed of the jet stream. But there is a storm, there is cold, and there is some snowfall. Again, not a major snowstorm on this solution, but we do see huge fluctuations from model run to model run, like I mentioned. So expect a lot of potential changes. This will probably come north one run, show a major snowstorm. Everybody will be talking about it. It'll move south, nothing. Everybody's like, it's gone. Move north again, move south. It's going to be a roller coaster, just as these always are in the long range. As we keep moving on, we're going to see the European model show this storm cash in, by the way. So that's the main reason we're talking about it, but they're not too far off. They both have the storm. It's just a slight difference that leads to a massive outcome difference. And we even see what to me looks like the setup for maybe a fourth system down the line. We're going to get a lot more active, it looks like, as there's more moisture building in the same area. But this one, as the jet stream stands, would likely be another flat one that moves directly off the coast unless we see changes, which, hint, we will. As we take a look at the European model for storm number 1, we're not going to see much of any changes between the GFS and the European models. Again, location, amounts are highly confident at this point, and both models agree almost perfectly. As we keep going, what we will see is snowstorm number 2 start to build there in the Gulf of Mexico and move up. Snowstorm number 2 on this one is a little less impactful. We do see a very similar low location. It just doesn't develop quite as much. And we do get snowfall in these mid-Atlantic areas, but this would probably be much more of a bullseye of 6 to 10 inches for somebody with this system. Probably not the 10-inch plus, even 15-inch plus storm that likely the GFS model just showed. When we move past this, though, again, that's for the 10th, 11th timeframe. This is one that we've been tracking for about a week now, maybe a little bit more. As we keep going, we see this second one build. Again, Wednesday the 15th, very similar to that second one. And what we end up getting is 2 areas of energy, one near the coast, one up here. They're in perfect alignment, and we end up getting some pretty major snowfall throughout the Ohio Valley, southern Appalachian Mountain Range, areas like that. And as we keep going, towards the day on Friday, we see this becomes a much more major low, 997 near the southern Outer Banks. Heavy snowfall throughout these areas definitely would be a much more impactful one than what the GFS model showed. Even tries to move up the coast with some of the areas like New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware seeing some snowfall before that one moves out. And believe it or not, we do get pretty good agreement that there might be more of these types of systems moving in, both on the GFS and European model runs. We see this. It's right in here building, and this could spell more activity down the line. I think that's the biggest takeaway here with this information, is just the fact that we're seeing repetitive storms moving through, plenty of cold air. I think that we are far from being done with the snowfall, at least during this pattern. Obviously, we still have the rest of January, February and early March to go, so there's going to be more opportunities down the line. But as far as the next like 20 days, I think that the activity looks to continue based on what we're seeing from the models here. When we take a look here at the European models total precipitation, we see this area is kind of a hot spot. Obviously, when we see 2, 3, 4 major storms move through here, it's expected to see a lot of precipitation. The Northwest starts to pick up on some activity, but again, still going to be below average for them as they average so much. When we look at the precipitation anomalies, we see just that, below average for the entire West. Very, very typical of a positive PNA, by the way. Above average precipitation throughout the South Central, the Gulf states, and then near normal for these areas. Again, kind of in line with some storms moving through, some drier periods in between, but we do know storms move through here. A little bit drier in the Northeast. Since these storms don't get the pull that they need, they kind of just move out flatly, as we mentioned earlier, avoiding this area. That could change, keep in mind. When we take a look at the total snowfall in the European model, we can tell across all of these storms, we do get major amounts for this corridor of the nation: Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast. Northeast may be the most lackluster of all of these locations because, again, none of them really pull up the coast. Even the South Central states cashing in on quite a bit of heavier snowfall, and despite the below average precipitation, the West still gets feet of snowfall, as they always do, basically. When we zoom into the East, we can see a lot of these areas, you know, again, this is including the first snowstorm happening now, but 10, 15, 20 inches over the course of multiple storms would certainly put us on pace for an average to above average snowfall season over the course of multiple storms for many of these areas. So good news for those of you in snow droughts. GFS model maybe even a little bit more bullish on the snowfall for these areas, but very similarly, the Northeast is who misses out the most. In particular, southern New England and more coastal New England down through like New York City, Philadelphia area. That's the pocket where we see the most lack of snowfall here. We see so much more to your south in this instance because we have this storm move through. Again, multiple suppressed snowstorms moving underneath, so we get kind of a storm track like this a lot of the time. Then a lot of this in the interior is lake effect, so we get a lot of this lake effect, and we get an upper level low for a lot of these areas during one of these storms. So really all of this almost avoids this area. So pretty interesting look. Again, as we zoom into the east, once again, 10, 15, 20 inches in a lot of these regions. So really good news for the snow droughts. When we look at the temperature anomalies, we're really just going to stay cold. I mean, there's not much to talk about. We're really cold right now. We stay really cold through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We start to warm in the north a little bit as we reach the 15th, 16th. The southeast stays colder. Again, the west is pretty cold too, but we see a lot of this on the move eastward again for the 20th of January, where we're still cold in the east, and I really feel like we might develop another positive PNA here, so really no end in sight still, which is so surprising. GFS model, we're going to get quite a good amount of agreement. I mean, we get some warming in there, again, especially in the north near the 15th, but the cold kind of rebounds, and on this model as we approach the 20th, we do have a positive PNA here with more cold shots, even more major than what we've been seeing lately in January, moving in for around the 19th, 20th, 21st, and beyond. This is a bullish look for continued cold through the entirety of the month of January and likely many more snow threats. So very, very interesting stuff. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. We will continue, of course, to track all of these things with you guys. So be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.